everyone. Welcome to the Arm Coach Podcast, episode 76. Today, we're diving into something that most fitness coaches never talk about. But I'm not most coaches, and you didn't come here for a recycled Pinterest arm workout. You came here because you're done doing things halfway. You want real results. To get that, we have to start by questioning the way you think. Because here's the truth. Nobody wants to admit it's not your age, your metabolism, or your schedule keeping you stuck. It's the questions you're asking yourself. What's the point? Why does this feel so hard? Why can't I stay consistent? Why even bother when I've already screwed up the week? These questions, they're not innocent. They're poison, and they're shaping your behavior without you even realizing it. The fitness industry will sell you 1,000 workouts, meal plans, supplements, and hacks, but none of that matters if you're still waking up every morning asking, am I really cut out for this? And you want to tone your arms. You want to build a body you're proud of at 52 or 56 or 60, then stop waiting for willpower and start auditing your questions. Because here's what most women don't realize. Your brain is a problem-solving machine. Ask it a crappy question and it'll give you a crappy answer. Why is this so hard? Turns into because you're too old. Why can't I stick with it? Turns into because you never do. But change the question and everything shifts. Instead of why do I always fall off track? Try what can I do today to build trust with myself? It's a small shift, but it's everything. Look, someone back in the Bronze Age invented the wheel because they asked a better question. How can I move this heavy stuff more easily? One question changed the world. One question can change your body. If you're still stuck obsessing over how to get toned arms with the perfect routine, you're asking the wrong question. Toned arms don't start with a workout. They start with a thought. And most women don't have the guts to go there. Now, here's the deal. Questions aren't just for scientists and inventors. They're for you. They're for women who are sick of spinning their wheels and ready to change their lives. And the best part, this tool, this brain-altering, habit-shifting, arm-toning power tool, it's completely free. No gym membership, no meal prep, no supplements required. But here's the problem. No one ever taught you how to use it. Not your trainers, not your doctors, not your favorite fitness influencer. And because of that, most women are misusing this tool every single day without even realizing it. You're asking questions that are literally sabotaging your results. Questions that sound innocent on the surface, but are quietly digging a hole under everything you're trying to build. Questions like, why do I always mess this up? Why does this take me so long? Why is everyone else doing better than me? Let's just call it what it is. Mental sabotage in the form of curiosity. And if you keep doing it, you'll keep proving your brain right and staying stuck in the exact same cycle you say you want to break. So today I'm breaking this open. I'm showing you exactly what happens when you ask yourself a question, right? How it triggers a cascade inside your brain that either moves you forward or holds you hostage. Because inside the think, feel, act cycle, which we talk about a lot in this space, questions aren't neutral. They don't just float around like background noise. They create your reality. So let's start with this. A thought is just a sentence in your brain. That's it. One little sentence in your head that sets off a chain reaction of emotions and actions. So, what's a question? A question is just a thought in disguise. Unlike a regular thought, a question doesn't just sit there, it demands an answer. It sends your brain on a mission. And here's what most women miss: your brain will always answer the question you ask it, even if that question is toxic, even if it keeps you stuck in shame, doubt, and self pity. Ask it, why can't I ever finish what I start? And your brain will dig up every piece of evidence that makes you feel hopeless. But ask it, what's one small win I can create today to prove I'm changing? And guess what? Your brain starts finding proof that you can. That's the difference between staying in the spin cycle of inconsistency and becoming the woman who actually sculpts the strong, toned arms she says she wants. So if your habits feel hard, if you keep starting over, if you secretly believe you're the problem, it might not be your effort. It might be your questions. And most women, they don't have the guts to face that. Here's what you need to know. When you ask your brain a question, it will do whatever it takes to find an answer. It's how your brain is wired. It hates not knowing. Just think about the last time you were with friends or family and someone couldn't remember the name of a movie or what year something happened. What happens? Somebody pulls out their phone. You Google it, you check Wikipedia, you find the answer. We don't like open loops. We want closure. And your brain, it's doing that all the time, searching, filling in the gaps, answering questions, whether they're helpful or not. But here's the problem. There are some questions that can't be Googled. Questions about you, about your habits, about your body, about your ability to follow through. And when you ask those questions, like, why can't I ever stay on track? Or why don't I have toned arms yet? Your brain still wants an answer. But instead of facts, it gives you thoughts. And those thoughts go straight into your think, feel, act cycle. So let me show you exactly how this works. Say you ask, why hasn't my friend responded to my text? Now, you can't Google that. You can't look it up, but your brain still wants to know. So it fills in the blanks with thoughts. You might think, she's probably swamped with work. Or maybe she's upset with me. Same question, two totally different answers. One of them keeps you feeling calm. The other one stirs up anxiety or self-doubt. What's most important is this: the question didn't make you feel anything until you answered it with a thought. That's what most women don't understand. You think you're just being reflective or trying to problem solve, but if your question leads to a thought that makes you feel discouraged, guilty, or stuck, that one question is quietly shaping your entire behavior. So if you're asking yourself things like, why do I always mess this up? Why is this so hard for me? Why can't I just be more motivated? Be careful, because the answers your brain serves up might be the very reason you keep stopping. Your results, the way you show up, how you feel, and whether or not you follow through are being driven by questions you don't even realize you're asking. So let's break this down even further. Same question, why hasn't my friend responded to my message? Now, in one scenario, your brain answers, she's probably really busy with work. Okay. In that version, you feel calm maybe even a little compassion or patience. You move on with your day. But in another version, your brain answers, she must be upset with me. That one tiny shift. Now you're anxious. Now you're spinning. You're second guessing everything you said. Maybe you're even over apologizing or pulling back. The question was exactly the same, but the answer, your thought, determined the entire emotional tone of your day. That's how powerful this is. And it's happening in your arm journey too. You're asking, why don't I feel motivated today? And your brain answers, because I always give up. Or worse, because I'm too far gone. But here's the kicker. Most women have no idea this is even happening. These questions and answers are flying under the radar. You don't even realize you're doing it. You think you're just telling the truth or being realistic. But what you're actually doing is reinforcing every old identity you say you want to leave behind. Because here's the truth. Before you start paying attention to your thoughts, most of them are just operating on autopilot. The same is true for the questions you're asking. They're background noise, but that noise, it's running the show. You're not just unaware of the thoughts you're having, you're unaware of the questions that triggered them. And the scariest part, you're also unaware of the answers your brain is generating in response. This is the invisible cycle keeping so many women stuck. Not because they're lazy, not because they're weak, but because they're totally unconscious to the mental loops driving their actions. Now, here's the good news. You can wake up. You can train yourself to pay attention. You can catch the pattern, but it takes a willingness to admit that the way you've been thinking, maybe for years, isn't helping you. And that takes courage. And if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you might already see where this is going. Because I've talked a lot about how the brain evolved to constantly scan for danger, right? That ancient survival instinct is still alive and well in you. Thousands of years ago, if you looked at a rustling bush and wondered, could there be a tiger in there? That was helpful. That question could save your life. But now you're standing in front of a mirror wondering, why haven't I made more progress? Why don't I look the way I want to? Why can't I just be consistent? Your brain is still searching for danger, still hunting for threats. And if you're not careful, it'll serve up the worst case scenario every single time. This is what you're up against. And here's where it gets tricky. Thousands of years ago, your brain was doing you a favor by scanning for danger. Back then, it was necessary. Fast forward to today, and most of us aren't dodging predators or fighting for survival every time we leave the house. And yet, your brain is still acting like you are. It's still tilted toward the negative. It still assumes the worst. And it still thinks it's being helpful. So every time you ask yourself a question about your progress, your consistency, your potential, your brain is trying to protect you with the most pessimistic answer possible. You're not just feeling discouraged out of nowhere. You're creating that discouragement with unchecked thinking. This is what happens when you don't supervise your mind, when you let your brain run on autopilot. And most women are doing exactly that. They're asking themselves question after question throughout the day, and their brain is answering every single one of them with fear, self-doubt, or worst case scenarios. Why haven't I made more progress? Because you never stick with anything. Why is this so hard? Because you're not cut out for this. You're not failing because of your body. You're not failing because of your age. You're failing because you're believing every thought your brain serves up without question. Once you start paying attention, you'll notice something shocking. Most of your answers are negative by default. That's how the human brain evolved. But it's also how most women stay stuck, thinking they just need more discipline, when what they really need is more awareness. So let me give you an analogy. Remember the magic 8 ball? I had a friend growing up who had one, and we used to shake it constantly, asking questions and waiting for the little triangle to float up with a mysterious answer. There were 20 possible responses, okay? 10 were positive, 5 were neutral, 5 were negative. Okay, pretty decent odds, right? But your brain, it's not a fair magic 8 ball. It's a rigged one. When you ask it a question, your odds aren't split evenly. They're stacked against you. Because unless you've trained your brain to think differently, it's going to keep spitting out answers like, doesn't look good, don't count on it, very doubtful, you always mess this up. And most women don't even notice it happening. They keep asking the same questions, getting the same discouraging answers, and then wondering why they feel stuck, frustrated, or like they're not cut out for the body they want. This is what makes my coaching different. I'm not here to tell you to try harder. I'm here to teach you how to think smarter. Because until you fix the way you question yourself, no workout in the world will ever be enough. Here's what you need to remember. Your brain thinks it's helping you when it answers your questions negatively, but it's not helping. It's hurting. If you're not actively supervising your mind, if you're not paying attention to the automatic responses that follow the questions you ask, then you're walking straight into a pattern of think, feel, act cycles that are built on shame, doubt, and discouragement. And that's not just keeping you from toned arms. It's keeping you from trusting yourself. It's keeping you stuck in the exact cycle you keep swearing that you'll break. But here's something even more important. Some of the questions you're asking yourself, they can't be answered in a healthy way, no matter how much mindset work that you've done. Let me say that again. There are questions that are so loaded, so negative at their core, that even if you're doing the work, even if you know your brain leans negative, you're still going to struggle to come up with a neutral, let alone empowering answer. These are what I call dead end questions. And if you don't learn to spot them, they will quietly derail every attempt you make at change. Let me give you some examples. What's wrong with me? Why am I such a screw up? How come I never stick to my plans? Why do I always fall off the wagon? Why can't I be disciplined like other women? Now, notice something? Every single one of those questions starts from a place of deficit. Your brain isn't being invited to see what's going right. It's being commanded to search for everything that's wrong. So, of course, it responds with answers that reinforce failure. That's how the brain works. It's not objective. It answers questions based on the tone of the question. Ask, why don't I have arms like her? And your brain doesn't remind you that you've shown up for 3 workouts this week. It tells you it's because you're too old, too late, or just not capable. And the worst part, you believe it. This is why so many women stay stuck in all or nothing trap. Because the questions they're asking, like, why do I never follow through? Why do I always mess it up? Those words never and always lock you into a thought pattern that only has one possible result: giving up. And let's be honest, if you've spent years asking dead end questions like these, it makes total sense that your motivation is dried up. It makes total sense that you keep waiting to feel ready. You're living in a mental loop that only leads to shame, frustration, and hopelessness. Why can't I stay consistent? Why don't I have any self control? Why is this my struggle? These aren't innocent thoughts. These are emotional traps dressed up as self-reflection. And the answers your brain gives, they create the exact emotions that sabotage your ability to take action. Emotions like shame, embarrassment, frustration, isolation, hopelessness, powerlessness. And once you know the think, feel, act cycle, you can see exactly what's happening. Those thoughts create your feelings, and your feelings drive your actions. And actions based on hopelessness don't lead to progress. They lead to more spiraling, more waiting, more starting over. That's why in Arms by Kristine, we don't just lift weights. We lift the mental weight that's been pulling you under. We don't just change what you're doing, we change what you're thinking. Because until you learn how to replace dead end questions with powerful ones, you'll keep sabotaging your own momentum without even realizing it. Let's recap what you now know and why this matters so deeply for your progress. First, when you ask your brain a question, it immediately goes to work trying to answer it. That's what it does. That's its job. Your brain is constantly scanning, searching, filling in the blanks. You ask, it answers. Second, the answers your brain gives you, those are thoughts. And those thoughts plug right into the think, feel, act cycle, meaning they shape how you feel, and how you feel shapes whether you follow through or fall off. This is where results are either created or crushed. Third, your brain is hardwired to skew negative. It thinks it's protecting you, like it's spotting danger, but all it's really doing is sabotaging your confidence and momentum. So even when you ask a question that seems neutral, like, why hasn't she texted me back? Your brain is far more likely to generate a negative answer than a helpful one. And fourth, you're not just answering neutral questions negatively. You're asking dead end questions that guarantee negative answers. Why can't I stay consistent? What's wrong with me? Why do I always fall off track? These questions sound reflective, but really they're emotional quicksand. And most women don't see it until they're so deep in discouragement, they forget they ever had a goal in the first place. Let me be clear. If you want toned, strong arms, if you want to trust yourself again, if you want to stop riding the roller coaster of motivation and self-sabotage, you can't afford to keep thinking like the old version of you. Now, when you first learn how questions function inside the think, feel, act cycle, it might feel a little discouraging, okay? You might be tempted to think, wow, Are questions just setting me up to fail? But don't forget what I told you at the beginning. Questions are not the enemy. They are the beginning. They are the spark. They are the tool your brain uses to grow, evolve, and create something better than what you've known before. Every invention, every breakthrough, every transformation begins with a question. And when it comes to personal development, especially as a woman over 50 who is rewriting her story, questions are where it all starts. That's why in Arms by Kristine, we don't just change your habits, we change your internal dialogue. Because once you learn to question everything with purpose, everything shifts. You stop asking what's wrong with you and start asking, what's the next best step I can take? What would I do right now if I trusted myself completely? How can I show up like the woman I want to become? So, yes, your brain will always try to default to the negative. Yes, it will try to protect you in all the wrong ways. But once you know that, you have the power to interrupt the pattern. So let's talk about powerful questions because this is where everything starts to shift. Now, don't confuse powerful with fluffy or blindly positive. Powerful questions aren't about pretending everything's great. They're about asking your brain to think differently, to get out of the emotional basement and start climbing toward actual change. A powerful question doesn't just come from a more positive place, it comes from a place of possibility. It's open-minded, it's intentional, it's often compassionate. And above all, it forces your brain to search for something better instead of spiraling deeper into self-judgment. Powerful questions create space, right? Space for insight, curiosity, creativity, appreciation, even solutions. And that's why they work. That's why they move you forward. Okay, so let me show you what this sounds like. Here are some examples of powerful questions. How can I practice more love right now? How can I find gratitude in this situation? What would curiosity do in this moment? How can I make this more fun? What can I give? What is perfect about this? How can I create what I want today? Now, let's be honest, these probably aren't the questions running through your mind at 3 p.m. when you're standing in the kitchen debating, whether to throw in the towel on your workout. They're definitely not the ones you're asking when the scale doesn't budge or when your progress feels slow or invisible. No, that's not what you're thinking. What you're used to are the dead end questions, the ones that sound like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I such a failure? Why can't I ever figure this out? Why do I always sabotage myself? Those sound familiar? These are the questions you've been living in, rehearsing, honestly. And they don't make you curious. They make you ashamed. They make you stuck. But here's the good news. Often, it only takes a tiny shift to turn a dead end question into a powerful one. You can go from, how am I ever going to figure this out, to how can I find a solution? One word changes everything. And so does the path your brain goes down. Or try this. Instead of, why is she always such a jerk to me? Ask, I wonder what she's thinking that's leading her to act this way. That doesn't mean you excuse the behavior. It means you stop feeding the spiral because the first version makes you feel defensive, right? The second one, it makes you curious. And curiosity is a powerful state. It softens your thinking and opens doors your old mindset would have slammed shut. Okay, now let's take a fitness example. Why am I so fat? That question is brutal and sad, and many women ask it daily. But what if you replaced it with, what can I do today to take care of my body? That one shift, it changes everything. It moves your focus from judgment to action, from shame to self respect. And that's where true consistency begins, not in a gym, but in your mind. In Arms by Kristine, this is what we do. We rewire the mental patterns that have been keeping you stuck for decades. We replace dead end loops with deliberate, empowering questions that actually create momentum and help you follow through. Because the same principles that apply to reshaping your mindset apply to sculpting your arms, honoring your body, and rebuilding real trust with yourself. It's the exact same brain. So instead of, why can't I control myself? You ask, what am I in control of right now? Instead of, why is it so hard for me? You shift to, what am I learning through this? And that old question I used to ask myself over and over, why me? Gets flipped into the most powerful one of all. Why not me? There are such subtle ways that you can really shift a dead end question to a powerful question, and it will make all the difference. Because no matter what, if you ask your brain a question, it will start searching for an answer. And the quality of the answer you get is shaped by the quality of the question you ask. If you've been asking yourself the same old questions, why can't I stick with it? Why is this so hard for me? What's wrong with me? You're going to keep coming up with the same disempowering answers. Not because you're broken, but because your brain is simply doing what it's been trained to do. So here's your assignment, your mental workout, if you will. Step one, start noticing the questions running through your mind. Which ones are on repeat? Are they neutral? Are they negative? Are they setting you up for power or for shame? Step two, pay attention to the answers your brain is offering. Are they making you feel stronger, calmer, more in control, or are they quietly draining your motivation? Nothing has gone wrong if your answers lean negative. Your brain is just following old programming. But now you know better. And now you can start choosing differently. Step three, spot the dead end questions, the ones baked in negativity, all or nothing thinking, or hidden shame. They're sneaky, but they are the reason so many women stay stuck, even when they're doing everything right on paper. And finally, step four, pick one powerful question and practice it on purpose. Okay, write it down. Make it the lock screen on your phone. Stick it on your mirror. Start carving a new path, one where your thoughts work for you, not against you. One of my favorites, what is this situation teaching me? It works in the big moments and the small ones. When you're in the middle of a tough workout, when you're staring in the mirror, picking yourself apart, when you're tempted to say, I'll start over Monday, this question invites your brain to search for wisdom, not self pity. It's a question that builds mental muscle. And mental muscle is what leads to physical follow through. Because here's the truth, you won't sculpt strong toned arms by thinking like the version of you who quits. You have to think like the woman who follows through, who trains her brain, who leads her body, who decides to show up again and again until her reality matches her vision. That's exactly what we do inside Arms by Kristine. We don't just tone bodies, we rewire beliefs. So you stop asking, why can't I? And start asking, how will I? That shift, it changes everything. Okay, that's it for today. And if this hit home for you, if you're starting to see how your mindset might be the missing piece, I'd love to help you take this deeper. You can learn more at thearmcoach.com. Until next time, pay attention to your questions and lead with the kind of thinking that moves you forward. Talk soon.